Finally tonight, Kansas. It's a land synonymous with me Googling Kansas 20 minutes ago to see if it's synonymous with anything. Turns out mainly wheat and tornadoes that blow away their wheat.
But the point is, Sanders is a loon. He wears socks on his hands and gloves on his feet. He butters his bread with Vaseline. He lives in a pineapple under the sea. If Salvador Dali and Dr. Seuss had a child, and that child was raised by schizophrenic howler monkeys, it would be Bernie Sanders. Give me a taste of this crazy wacko cuckoo bird.
Everyone agrees that we have to do something about ISIS. We've tried bombing, but recently I saw this news item. U.S. Air Force running out of bombs to fight ISIS. How does the Air Force run out of bombs? That's like Denny's running out of cholesterol. Now, you know there's a name for an Air Force with no bombs. It's called an airline.
Hey everyone, my name is Liz again. We are on part 5 of my 6-part series on the question, is journalism dying or just transforming? What you just saw was a series of clips of John Oliver, Jon Stewart, and Stephen Colbert on their respective television shows. They're all satirical, if you haven't noticed by now, and the reason I showed them at the beginning was to kind of give you a taste of what I'm going to be talking about in this video exactly, which is just focusing on the journalistic ability of these political satire shows on television and how it contributes to the overall conversion of news and how it's formulated in mass media today. So to start, I think many people would argue that shows like The Daily Show, Last Week Tonight, and the Stephen Colbert Report are acceptable forms of journalism. The shows subscribe to late-night television. It's a ploy most often used by mass media companies to attract a younger demographic. And also, the late-night shows play up political drama going on in the news. John Oliver tends to focus on feature pieces, similar to specific long-form journalistic pieces that you might see in newspapers or online. I would argue Jon Stewart talked about a specific issue, but remained political, focusing on political pundits specifically. As Nate Silver talked about in his book The Signal and the Noise, he talks about the role of political pundits as either foxes or hedgehogs. Stewart tends to focus on hedgehog political pundits, although from time to time he selects certain foxes to humiliate. In my opinion, I think it's way more easy to humiliate the hedgehogs because usually their predictions are more outlandish, more out there, and they're less willing to change their position on the issue. Therefore, the liberal media can take to these hedgehog sort of people and humiliate their mistakes and their experiences and their conservative beliefs possibly. In other shows like John Oliver on Last Week Tonight, he is an HBO show. Therefore, he uses swear words and other inappropriate material to craft his message. I personally enjoy watching John Oliver because it is more of a venting session rather than political satire. Although he does reveal the evil, narcissistic, bitter side of politics and other injustices in the world. Lastly, my least favorite, but nonetheless an important satirical televised skit, is the Stephen Colbert Report, which is now The Late Night with Stephen Colbert. I don't think he's that funny, but I do think he is important in the political scheme of things in adding his own liberal opinion in in using conservative satirical methods to make fun of and satirize the conservative world today. So, in my previous argument about hedgehog and foxes, I found a clip of Jon Stewart totally calling out Bill O'Reilly on his conservative policies, tactics on his show, and I think it was a really good example of Jon Stewart, one, speaking the truth about Bill O'Reilly, and two, using his hedgehog ability or his hedgehog identity as a way to pursue just news and unveiling the injustices that are going on in the news today. So check out this clip.
Are you familiar with Leonard Peltier?
Yes.
Okay. Leonard Peltier was convicted of killing 2 FBI
All right, now we're going on to Wounded Knee.
It's similar.
Uh-huh.
All right.
No, it's not.
Well, why is it
petty,
not?
Because you're petty-fogging the issue.
It's the exact same thing. It's a guy convicted of killing a law enforcement official, no? Guess who wrote a song about Leonard Peltier?
Yeah.
Bono.
Okay.
Guess where he was? The White House. Booyah!
All right.
That's a rap word.
Did Bono?
Yes.
Did he actually come out and say that he was innocent?
I think that's the crux of the song.
No, I think it was raising questions about it. And the basic theme.
Now who's pettifogging? Now I can't even see you.
I can't.
You're pettifog. No, that is exactly the same.
Okay.
Bob Dylan wrote a song about a convicted killer named Hurricane Carter. He's been to the White House. Why are you drawing the line at Common? There is a selective outrage machine here at Fox that pettifogs only when it suits the narrative that suits them. This guy is in the crosshairs in a way that he shouldn't be. Whether you agree with him or not, you may think he's ignorant in believing that Assata Shakur is innocent. You may think he's ignorant in believing that Mummy is. But then guess what? Bono can't go to the White House. Springsteen can't go to the White House. Bob Dylan can't go to the White House. You got a lot of people that aren't allowed to sit in the White House because they've written songs.
That because Bono, Springsteen, and Bob Dylan wrote songs defending people who were accused of heinous things, that I have to give Common a pass because he did the same thing.
You have to be consistent with your outrage.
Let me be consistent. I will.
I think a really, really good thing comes out of the interview like you just saw, in that these political satirists can do some actual good for the world, in my opinion at least, and they offer their own opinions to society as a different way of looking at things and challenging the norm of how we view dominant mainstream news today. And in each one of their individual shows, which I'll show clips of them next, they relate these issues and tie them into their satire as a way for people to see the injustices that are going on through a new critical lens.
Bud Light. If Budweiser is the king of beers, then Bud Light is the feudal peasant covered in donkey shit of beers. And this week, Bud Light found itself in trouble.
Hard to understand how this made it past the pitch meeting. A slogan on bottles of Bud Light called it, quote, the perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary for the night.
Some said the message recalls alcohol's connection to sexual assault.
Critics saying it invites attacks on women.
I say it has a certain rapey feel to it.
Okay. That's true, but it would be great if you used a slightly more serious word than rapey, because it's somewhat diminishing. It's like saying Floyd Mayweather is a smidge assaulty. It's technically correct, but it'd be more appropriate to say he's a woman-battering human landfill. That would be more on the money. He's a good boxer. He boxes as well, apparently.
The Air Force has fired more than 20,000 bombs and missiles in Syria, and 20,000 sounds like a lot to me. So I'm beginning to think that just bombing might not work. ISIS might be unconvincible by the boom boom room. And this may be the reason why.
ISIS fighters may be fueled by not just extremist ideologies, but also by a black market amphetamine that's becoming popular in the Middle East.
Jihadist fighters are believed to be using it as a go pill.
You don't have to sleep, and it gives you a sense of well-being and euphoria, and you think that you're invincible and that nothing can harm you.
It makes you feel as if nothing can harm you. Well, I think I speak for everyone watching the news lately when I say, can I have some? Now, the specific drug in question is called Captagon, which was originally produced in the 1960s to treat conditions such as hyperactivity. So basically, they're taking Jihadderall. And Captagon does the job. One captured ISIS fighter described its effect this way. It makes us feel big, strong, as if looking at the battle from above. You think the tanks are little birds that you can destroy with your sword. Of course, to the guy in the tank, you look like a guy waving a sword about to be run over by a tank.
When I was doing research for this show and for this episode, I realized that there were a lot of different types of sources out there that had also media reports and scholarly reports that would help me formulate this data and help validate my facts and statistics. I was really surprised by the amount of data that people have collected from, especially The Daily Show, in formulating how satire affects audiences' ways of consuming news. One of the most prominent studies I found was titled The Daily Show Effect, and its reasoning behind the study was to study young adults watching The Daily Show and its soft news effect that it would have on their political views and the way that they would see this soft news television play out. They found that participants exposed to jokes about George W. Bush and John Kerry on The Daily Show tended to rate both candidates more negatively, even when controlling for partisanship and other demographic variables. Moreover, they found that viewers exhibited more cynicism towards the electoral system and the news media at large. Despite these negative reactions, viewers of The Daily Show reported increased confidence in their ability to understand the complicated world of politics. Their findings are significant in the burgeoning field of research on the effects of soft news on the American public. And although research indicates that soft news contributes to democratic citizenship in America by reaching out to the inattentive public, their findings indicate that The Daily Show may have more detrimental effects, driving down support for political institutions and leaders among those already inclined towards nonpartisanship. So, you can see from this that this could have a huge effect on the way journalism is written and the way that journalistic institutions and media outlets form the news and give it out to the people. In the report, they found that the more inattentive people for the news were not as likely to pay attention to large news events that were maybe in more complicated language, less humorous language, as you could find in the New York Times or the Washington Post, CNN. Those are more serious media outlets, whereas the soft news factor in The Daily Show and Last Week Tonight and all those provided soft news context where humor could be used and satire would be a way for these journalists and these satirists to reveal injustices going on in a more friendlier way. So, in conclusion, I think that watching these shows are really good tools for journalists to identify real issues that are going on, especially for young people who are maybe just discovering the injustices that are going on in our world and the political disadvantages other people might have over others. So I think it's a really great tool for journalists to look at and to understand their political perspective. They should not be the only form of news that we look at, even though it is humorous and it's glamorous and it's funny and you want to watch it and you think you understand more about politics, but in actuality, the real information comes from hard-hitting news journalism, investigative journalism that you can maybe find in a newspaper or online that isn't inundated with jokes. And I think that is the largest issue with these television shows, is that they are inundated with jokes and little quips that are clever, that kind of detract from the overall perspective of the news and the hard-hitting things that the people need to know. But otherwise, I love these shows. They are my favorite. They give me a lot of different perspectives on how to view the news through a critical lens and how to better understand it in today's society. So I hope you'll join me for my next video next week. It'll be my final video on the question, is journalism dying or just transforming? So I hope you join me there for my last video. And yeah,